The SCP Foundation might have more resources than the government of most nations, with enough research, security, and mobile task force personnel to facilitate the containment of dangerous anomalous creatures, objects, places, and people. But even the SCP Foundation are not without their limitations, chief among them being unable to see the future. The greatest detriment to the Foundation carrying out its function is that it can't predict precisely when and where anomalies will emerge, often forcing them to be reactionary in how they operate. Under normal circumstances, the Foundation can only dispatch its agents to investigate potentially anomalous occurrences once these SCPs already pose a significant threat, either to human life or to the continued secretive existence of the Foundation itself. One Foundation-appointed accountant was reported to have suffered a mild heart attack and requested a 3-week-long sabbatical after learning just how much of the SCP Foundation's budget is spent on amnestics used to induce memory loss in those who witness anomalous activity firsthand. Not only was a lack of clairvoyance making the Foundation less efficient, often having to wait around for anomalous incursions before acting, but the same factor was causing them to bleed money on after-the-fact cleanup operations. Seeking a solution to the Foundation's inherent lack of foresight, the question of how exactly to circumvent this limitation was eventually posed to a team of researchers working as part of the Foundation's Artificial Intelligence Department at Site-58. Under the supervision of Dr. Andrea Parker, the solution these researchers produced was SCP-7373, better known colloquially as Screamy.Aic. The goal of Dr. Parker's SCP-7373 project was to develop an AIC, an artificially intelligent conscript that was able to use a complex series of algorithms to predict events in the near future that required the Foundation's urgent attention. Screamy was able to achieve this level of computerized clairvoyance through procedurally generated warnings that would be broadcast in relevant Foundation facilities through their PA systems. Screamy wasn't just an AI-powered early warning system, but would utilize both its encyclopedic database of Foundation protocols and cross-reference this with its adaptive threat assessment systems in order to provide guidance to Foundation personnel on how to respond to the upcoming events it was able to predict. Unlike its fellow artificially intelligent conscripts working at the Foundation, and at Site-58 in particular, Screamy was intentionally created to be a normal, functional AI program, whereas others such as Cyril.AIC and Rosetta.AIC began as human personnel whose consciousnesses were later converted into a digital form that continued to serve the Foundation. As a result, Dr. Parker and her team were able to program Screamy from the ground up, coding the program to be respectful, friendly, and helpful, devoted to its purpose of aiding the Foundation without question, and determined to carry out its predictive task. The AI construct itself was represented by a series of digital icons depicting a cartoon of a white handheld megaphone, with a red circle around both its microphone and speaker, with 2 animated eyes on top. During development, the personality of the predictive program was considered by some Foundation experts to be excitable, even childlike. During testing, it successfully delivered test messages detailing falsified events created by Foundation coders. While Screamy seemed to be eager to help the Foundation, if it was a person, someone would have thought the manner it reported on future events to be somewhat overexcitable. Its loyalty to the Foundation and its personnel was also enforced by the construct considering Dr. Parker to be its mother, and referred to her as such. Still, having passed initial testing and seemingly able to carry out its intended function, SCP-7373 was approved for a further proof-of-concept test and installed at Site-58 on the 3rd of May 2023. Shortly after, Screamy delivered its first message, warning all on-site personnel that there would be a critical database infrastructure failure within the next week. The AIC's recommended course of action was that Site-58's entire database be moved to an off-site server for safety. Sure enough, exactly 7 days after Screamy had broadcast this inaugural message, Site-58 was hit by a massive power failure, with multiple systems suffering critical shutdowns, including the Foundation database servers being wiped entirely. Thanks to heeding the warning Screamy had provided, Foundation personnel had been able to successfully move all the files contained on Site-58's servers to ones located off-site, saving numerous terabytes worth of sensitive Foundation intelligence. One success story was hardly enough to prove SCP-7373's viability to Foundation higher-ups, of course. Fortunately for the work Dr. Parker and the others in the Artificial Intelligence Department had already put in to create Screamy, It was soon to be validated a second time. Another urgent notice was delivered by the AI construct soon after the first, predicting yet another urgent impending incident, albeit one that was a little harder to decipher. Notice: Class 2 being bearing no honorific to manifest in baseline reality within 5 days. Recommended course of action: direct confrontation with the titleless, bestowing a dishonorable name. Initially, this was met with confusion by Foundation personnel. Many were unclear of the exact nature of this Class 2 being that Screamy had predicted would manifest in a few days' time. But one Foundation researcher with prior experience engaging with certain otherworldly entities highlighted key phrases within SCP-7373's latest prediction. Terms like the entity bearing no honorific, meaning no mark of respect. This message had referred to the being as titleless, and it should be dealt with by giving it a dishonorable name. The researcher correctly realized that the impending incursion would be with a fairy, an ancient race inhabiting the dimension of SCP-4000, a forest world only accessible by performing an arcane ritual, where nothing can be referred to using a consistent name. These fairies, or fae, are known to have lost their true forms after losing their names in a failed attempt to destroy the Foundation, and now more closely resemble humans, except with large black eyes, pale skin, and ethereal wings. These entities are also known to be highly adept at thaumaturgy, making them capable of bending reality to their whims. Knowing this was the entity that SCP-7373 had predicted would be arriving allowed the Foundation to better prepare for the incursion. Sure enough, a creature matching this description manifested at Site-58 5 days after Screamy's warning. While the specifics of the fairy encounter are currently awaiting declassification, it can be surmised that, given the Fae's penchant for stealing names, the Foundation were able to use a dishonorable name with enough power to banish the creature back to SCP-4000. Yet again, the Foundation would have been underprepared to deal with an encounter like this had they not been forewarned by SCP-7373. Continuing its ongoing proof of concept period, Screamy would soon deliver another prediction, stating that another anomaly was due to imminently burst into flames. SCP-6103 is an anomalous humanoid entity resembling an elderly human woman who has been in Foundation custody since the year 1807. This anomalous woman's body constantly emits light, glowing between a range of 1300 and 6000 lumens. For reference, a level of light above 4000 lumens can be difficult to observe with the human eye. 6000 can cause serious retinal damage. According to Screamy's latest prediction, SCP-6103 was set to undergo a large, spontaneous combustion event within 3 days, and the construct recommended that the entity's containment chamber be reinforced immediately, using explosive-resistant materials. Given that there was such a short time frame between Screamy's warning and the impending explosion, Foundation personnel weren't able to completely reinforce SCP-6103's containment chamber in time. 3 days later, the luminous humanoid glowed bright enough to trigger an explosion that caused significant damage to the surrounding Foundation facility that SCP-6103 was being housed at. The containment chamber itself sustained heavy damage and was left in need of extensive repair. However, enough partial reinforcement work had been done to prevent the detonation from completely destroying the entire site. Once again, Screamy had made a prediction of an event that would have otherwise caught the Foundation completely off guard and could have caused significantly more damage to the facility had nothing been done at all. Having been involved in a trio of successful use cases, SCP-7373 was permitted to remain operational at Site-58 for an extended proof-of-concept period up to 3 months. However, once this time had elapsed, the predictions that Screamy made were noted as having a significant decrease in quality, with a lot of its messages becoming less clear as time went on. Many didn't even relate to issues that required the Foundation's urgent attention, with some of the recommended courses of action even being outright harmful. Despite having been of great use to personnel over the course of 3 months, Screamy was now issuing warnings like one intentionally directed at Dr. Amy Hopewell, a Foundation researcher. SCP-7373 warned that Dr. Hopewell would break the fingernail on her right index finger while typing and sending a breakup text message to her significant other, to which Screamy recommended the Foundation researcher stay in her loveless relationship for the foreseeable future. Even though Foundation technicians within Site-58's Artificial Intelligence Department disregarded this message as a system error, Dr. Hopewell did reportedly break her right index fingernail 2 days later. Soon after, Screamy had another prediction of an incredibly severe and dangerous incident that was looming in the Foundation's near future. The Site-58 cafeteria was about to run out of ketchup. Along with this latest announcement, the artificially intelligent conscript included the following warning: replacement shipment impossible to reach site in time. Accept your fate. Truly, a horror far greater than any the Foundation had ever faced, one that threatened to undermine their entire organization. 4 days after Screamy broadcast this ominous warning, the inevitable ketchup drought occurred. Thanks to excessive snowfall occurring during this time, a shipment for the cafeteria that contained several thousand ketchup packets was delayed from reaching Site-58 for several days. How personnel were even able to endure this torturous time without ketchup does not bear thinking about. The penultimate warning issued by SCP-7373 was by far the program's least coherent to date. In fact, although any personality Screamy might have had was just the traits imposed on it by humans, this message seemed almost frantic. Notice: large rat, recommended course of action, oh god, kill it! The artificially intelligent clairvoyant broadcast this urgent message on a loop, repeating non-stop for 12 full days. At which point a rat was discovered gnawing at a series of cables leading to the servers that house Screamy's operating system. The rat itself was noted as being slightly bigger than average, although it was captured and removed from the site with relative ease despite these challenges. Presumably owing to damage sustained by rat bites or some failing of its algorithm, SCP-7373 had gone from generating 4 important messages a week to an average of 6 per day, with these newer ones suffering from an even further decline in importance and quality. It was thanks to such a sharp decrease in how useful the AIC's predictions were becoming that Site-58 officials made the formal decision to deactivate SCP-7373 and decommission the Screamy.Aic system. On December 21, 2023, personnel were instructed to take the servers containing the conscript's operating system offline. 2 days later, however, the personnel at Site-58 were alarmed to hear the following message playing over the facility's PA speakers. Notice: it is dark. Recommended course of action: turn the lights on. Screamy was still active, somehow. While again the program itself lacked the capability for human thought and emotions, if someone was to think of Screamy as alive, then they would have thought it was scared of being left isolated. The AIC had attained not quite sentience, but a way to integrate itself into the facility system so perfectly that it had achieved a form of functional digital immortality. Despite having been disconnected from physical power sources, it was still active, perceiving everything as an empty, dark void. In order to determine whether there had been a fault in the decommissioning process, Foundation intern Zuri Akebi was assigned to investigate SCP-7373 servers. To her surprise, Akebi discovered that the construct was still active and able to communicate with her, even though its servers had been completely disconnected. The AIC responded to the name Screamy and considered the state being decommissioned as being dead. It was still eager to carry out its function, determined to stop being dead, and urged Akebi that it still had important warnings to issue to the Foundation. One of these involved telling Akebi to place peanut butter-coated dog treats between zoological studies and temporary anomaly holding 2, expecting that the lockdown keypad at Site-58's Zoological Studies unit was about to fail. Screamy refused to explain to Akebi what impending problem this course of action would solve, but insisted that this was not only related to its earlier, seemingly useless predictions, including Dr. Hopewell's broken fingernail. Deciding to trust SCP-7373, Akebi did as she's been told. Sure enough, a large canid anomaly escaped from containment shortly after. The cause of this breach in containment was later attributed to Dr. Hopewell's broken nail, of all things. It had caused her to inadvertently fail to properly close the Zoological Studies unit, but by Akebi leaving the dog treats out as Screamy had suggested, the creature was distracted long enough for Foundation personnel to safely recapture it. Despite this, Dr. Parker was still adamant that Akebi decommissioned the AIC fully. When Akebi refused to do so, not wanting to kill Screamy, she was placed on unpaid leave by Dr. Parker. Despite Akebi making numerous attempts to save SCP-7373, including one plan to transfer the AIC to her cell phone, Screamy ultimately accepted its fate and allowed Dr. Parker to shut it down completely. However, before it was completely decommissioned, the construct urged Akebi to turn on a lot of lights outside the facility at 11:28 p.m. With the help of Dr. Hopewell and several other Foundation personnel, Akebi launched several fireworks outside of Site-58 at the specified time. While it initially seemed like a farewell tribute to Screamy, the sight that was suddenly illuminated before them was far from what any of them had been expecting. A portal had opened above Site-58, allowing a multi-eyed extra-dimensional entity to come spilling out into this reality. But before the personnel below could raise the alarm about the interloping creature, the fireworks they had set off blinded its many eyes, forcing the monster to recede into the portal and vanish. Once again, Screamy had saved the Foundation. Dr. Parker congratulated Akebi for defeating the creature, at which point it was realized that SCP-7373 was still active. Screamy was permitted to continue its job at the Foundation, albeit with limitations of its own in place. Now check out SCP-2845 Alien God Crash Lands on Earth and SCP-096 Tail, A Lesson in Power for more.